When you hear the "we sold everything" story, they often sound bold and over the top and like some cinematic leap off a cliff. But that wasn't us. For us, it wasn't dramatic. It wasn't even decisive. It started with $50. That's what we paid to go sailing for the day. That's it. The Aventura Sailing Club in Dana Point offered something called a social sail. 4 hours, a skipper, a couple of curious people. That was the entire commitment. Our skipper that day was a guy named Greg. We're still friends. In fact, he was the first person to visit us in Europe. But that day wasn't destiny. It wasn't a life plan. It was just motion. It was like saying, let's go to dinner. You're hungry. It's time to eat. So you get in the car. You don't know where you're going to go. You might end up at the grocery store. You'll decide when you get there. But staying in the house, not moving, guarantees you nothing. By getting in the car, you might get fed. And that's all this was. We weren't choosing a destination. We were choosing to move. Amy had lived on a boat as a kid. She sailed from the Bahamas to Venezuela. I had sailed a fair amount myself, so when the idea resurfaced, it didn't sound reckless. It actually kind of felt familiar. We started saying it out loud. What if we sailed around the world? And when we said it, we didn't mean to circumnavigate. We weren't trying to conquer anything. We meant sailing around the world, moving, not in one fixed place. But the idea wasn't romantic. If we didn't like it, we stopped. If the math didn't work, we stopped. If we couldn't handle being together for 24 hours a day in a very small, tight quarters, it stopped. If it didn't work for Tito, it stopped. There's no debate. There was no, we'll figure that out later. It just stopped. Now, we weren't going to find that out that weekend. If this was even going to be an option, though, we had to start preparing. Just getting my captain's license required 365 documented days on the water. 365. That doesn't happen by thinking about it. It happens by going. So we went. And that had a couple of side benefits that we didn't fully appreciate at the time. First, it gave Amy and I something to do. Something to do together, other than errands, other than logistics. We weren't managing the kids. We weren't managing our careers. We were doing something new. Something slightly uncomfortable. Something that required both of us to learn and to communicate. Second, if we never sailed around the world, we'd still become proficient sailors. And we liked it enough that being day sailors would be justification for the effort. And those realizations took the pressure off. This trip, this idea, didn't have to become a circumnavigation. It just had to be worth learning. And it was. So in April of 23, we went to La Paz with Baja Sailing for an intensive week-long liveaboard sailing class. The weather was brutal. The wind was howling. The kind of wind that makes you question your life choices. In hindsight, we shouldn't have been out there that day, especially since we were learning. Around that time, a sailboat crossing from the Gulf from Mazatlan to Cabo disappeared. There were 3 experienced American sailors. There was no wreckage. There was no debris. There was no signal. Nothing. When we were out there, we heard the radio chatter as search efforts were underway. Calls going out, positions being relayed, boats trying to coordinate. It was unlikely they were anywhere near us. But we did the right thing and we kept an eye out anyway, just in case. And somewhere in that week, it started to sink in. Out there, failure isn't inconvenient. It isn't a repair bill. It's final. One mistake and, well, you just disappear. The ocean's a big place, and this wasn't theoretical anymore. This was real. And yet, we still weren't deterred. Months later, we took our kids and a couple of their friends to the British Virgin Islands for a 10-day bareboat cruise. 10 days. No instructor, just us. So this wasn't about trimming sails in heavy wind. It was about running a boat, navigating, provisioning, watching the weather, keeping people safe. And something really unexpected happened. It worked. To this day, our kids say that this was the best 10 days of their lives. And we agree. Dropping anchor in quiet bays, snorkeling off the stern, swimming ashore for lunch, taking the dinghy to dinner at sunset. The air feels different. Time felt different. And the reality of those 10 days was better than the dream. We came back from that trip still inspired, and we took our biggest step, perhaps financially our biggest step. A 35-foot Beneteau. We leased it through a company called Sail Time in Newport Beach. Her name was Dulce Vida. It wasn't ownership, but it was close, and it felt like that for us. We called her hers, and we treated her like she was. We learned her sounds, her balance, when she needed less sail, and that magical moment where everything lines up. When the heel is perfect and the wind is harnessed cleanly and she cuts through the water like she was built to do. We liked it so much we slept aboard in the harbor. We sailed to Catalina, and Greg and I went out once or twice a week. If we're gonna log 365 days on the water, this is how it would happen. We weren't pretending anymore. We were preparing. And we were living the Dulce Vida. But there was something else we were quietly realizing. Tito wasn't allowed on Dulce Vida. It wasn't our boat. And that forced a bigger question. If we ever did this for real, could Tito do it too? And that wasn't optional. If this didn't work for Tito, it stopped. So we tested him separately in San Diego, in Lake Havasu, in Lake Powell. Any chance we got to put him on a boat, we took it. And he loved it. He found his balance quickly. He leaned into the wind like he belonged in it. But a traditional monohull like Dulce Vida, or even larger blue water versions, aren't really dog friendly. Getting down into the cabin means steep companion stairs. Boarding can be awkward. And with a 110-pound dog, you don't just pick them up and move them on board. They have to be able to do it themselves. And then there's the heel. When a monohull sails, it leans. It's part of the beauty. But for a big dog on teak floors, one moderate wind and those decks would be gouged deep with Tito's claws, just trying to keep his footing. Worse than the scratches was the risks of him slipping, getting hurt, being thrown off balance when the boat was loaded up. Risk wasn't theoretical, it was real. It sounds crazy, but that was one of the biggest reasons we started moving towards a catamaran. Sure, we liked the space. We liked that the boat stayed level, that he could lie flat under sail without fighting gravity, that Tito could move safely. Now, if it didn't work for Tito, it stopped. Before committing, we ran one final test. 21 days in Tahiti. The kids came with us for the first half of the trip. This wasn't island hopping with an instructor nearby. This was open water. Our first true solo crossing. Raiatea to Bora Bora, and then to Huahine. But this time we were on a catamaran. It confirmed what we were already thinking. the space, the stability, the layout. It worked. Then the kids flew home, and Amy and I stayed. Alone. No crew, no buffer, just the two of us, navigating, anchoring, provisioning, making weather calls. 24 hours a day for long stretches. That's a different test. And it worked. Boat shows followed. Local ones in Newport Beach, San Diego, then to Annapolis. We weren't browsing anymore. We were asking real questions. And the boat brokers noticed. They could tell we were serious. Spreadsheets came out, specs were compared, and budgets were modeled. Eventually, we crossed the line. We identified the boat, a Fontaine Pajot Tana 47, manufactured in La Rochelle, France. 47 feet, a real blue water catamaran. Stable, practical, level. And we already had her name. Tito time. The math worked. My captain's training was on track. Blake would leave for college the September before. We would sell the house and move to the Med in the spring of 2026. We wanted it. We had a plan. We were moving forward. Or so we thought.
Tito, come. Tito, come. He doesn't like it.